Let's take a look at this handout real quick here. We have a few minutes to walk through this. Okay? This handout is called How to Translate the Passive Tenses. We want to think about, you've learned passive tenses now. You've learned several. We want to just make sure we know how to translate these tenses that are passive. So what I want to do is remind you of some English grammar to help you with this. And in English, we can categorize our verbs in ways where we lay out something called the verb's principal parts. You've learned about principal parts for Greek verbs. English verbs have principal parts as well. So if you take a look at these verbs, I have speak, write, take, throw, love, and tempt. And I've given you three more principal parts besides the present principal part. The past principal part, the past participle, and the present participle. Now, your handout doesn't have my groovy red ink here, so I apologize for that. But you at least can see it on my screen. Now, when we form the present tense of any English verb, what we're going to do is we're going to use this present principal parts column. And for the third person singular, we'll always add an S or an ES, depending on how that verb ends. So speak becomes speaks, he, she, or it speaks. Otherwise, we leave the S off. I write, you write, he writes. I take, he takes. I throw, you throw, he throws. Love, right? And then temps. So loves and temps. Now, the past participle part is used to form what's called the English past tense. So any simple past time action without respect to its progress is going to use the past participle part. So John spoke, Mary wrote, I took, we threw, y'all loved, they tempted. All of our persons and numbers use the same past form, past participle part form. We don't modify this at all to form the past tense. The present perfect tense in English is the tense that uses the auxiliary verb to have in the present tense, plus it's going to use the past participle principal part. So take forms like I have blanked. What are we going to add? We're always going to add this form in the third column. I have spoken. I have written. Now, if you try to add the present principal part there, it's not going to sound good. I have speak. I have write. Does not work. What about the past? I have spoke. Some people say that, don't they? But that isn't proper English. I have wrote. Some people say that. I have threw. Not so frequently, right? But it's really I have spoken, I have written, I have taken, I have thrown, I have loved, I have tempted. Those are all the present perfect tense forms, and they use this past participle. And then we also can use the present participle for progressive forms. So I am speaking, you are writing, and so forth. But what we want to really focus on is this one here for this reason. When we deal with Greek passives, when they're truly passive in their sense, not what Mounce calls deponent passives, you're going to employ two verbal forms in your translation in English. You're going to use a form of the verb to be, and then you're going to always use the past participle principal part of the English verb. Which form of to be do you use? It depends on the Greek tense. Which form of the past participle do you use? Well, you don't get to choose the form. There is only one past participle for a verb's principal parts in English. So you use whatever you would have used for forming the tense like I have blanked. Whatever that verb form, for that verb that goes in there, that's what you're going to use to translate your English, the Greek passive into English, okay? So let's take a couple of examples here, okay? So we know that we're plugging in the third principal part for our past or present perfect tense. I have spoken, I have written, I have taken, you have spoken, you have written, you have taken, and so forth. So let's look at these Greek passives. If I have a present passive indicative in Greek, the present part tells me to use the present tense of to be. What are the present forms of to be? Am, is, or are. I am, he, she, it is, you are. And then I take the past participle in English of the verb. If it's lambano, it's going to be taken, because I would say I have taken, so I am taken. If it's love, the third principal part in English, is I have loved, then it's going to be I am loved. I am taken. He, she, or it is taken. He, she, or it is loved. All right? If it's the imperfect passive indicative, then what am I going to do? I'm going to take which form of to be? Since the imperfect is past and continuous, typically, then I'm going to use that for my form. Was being, were being. And then I still use the same past participle form on the right side. So I was being taken. That's the imperfect. Elam banamin. He, she, or it was being loved. Agapata or agapata. All right? What if I want to do the aorist passive indicative? Translate that into English. Elephthane, the aorist passive of lambano. I use the simple past of to be because the aorist is the simple past, was or were. And then I, again, continue to use the past participle principal part in English. Was taken, was loved, as in, I was taken, and he or she or it was loved. Future passive, what am I going to do? Which form of to be am I going to use? Got to use the future form, will be, and then the past participle. So I will be taken. He, she, or it will be loved. So you see how you might associate these past participle forms with past time, but it's really the form of to be that is giving you the tense value here in your English translation. And then when we learn the perfect in chapter 25, we still have to use a form of to be plus the past participle, but it's got to be the present perfect form. Have been, has been, plus the past participle part. So I have been taken. He, she, or it has been loved. Okay? So just wanted to walk through that with you so that you have a fairly clear idea of how we're going to translate these passive tenses.